quickly, just to lay some ground rules, we want this to be as informal as possible. So if you want, you can, once Dr. Boonn kind of talks through his career path, feel free to either take yourself off mute to ask questions, or you can just put it in the chat. And then can we just see quickly, of the med students that are here, who here, like what year you are? Katie, are you a medical student or?
I'm a first year.
Okay.
First year as well.
Bill, yeah, first year, right?
I'm also first year.
Okay. Fuki, you don't look like a med student.
No, I'm a 76-year-old resident. I'm attending at Mount Sinai West, Mount Sinai Morningside, Mount Sinai.
Oh, great. Okay, so Bill, I guess maybe just you want to start from the beginning, sort of your educational path and where you got from, how you wound up where you are now.
Sure thing. And actually, I put because these days I guess I can't speak without using some slides. I actually put together a couple things just to make it easier. And again, I also want to keep this as informal as possible. So if there are any questions during this whole process, please stop and interrupt. I want to keep this as as informal as possible. So I guess we'll start before I got to Mount Sinai. So I think I started at Mount Sinai in 1998. Before then, I actually went to Brown University as an undergraduate. And there I majored in neuroscience. And
looks like you have a fellow Brown person on here.
Yes.
Harley.
Yes, I actually also majored in neuroscience.
It's the best. It was the best concentration at Brown for sure.
Definitely agreed, 100%.
Yes. So after that, I took my interest in neuroscience and came to Mount Sinai. I was very excited to be in New York City, I pursued multiple different avenues. I actually did some projects with the neurology department. I actually did some research in neurosurgery. Worked a little bit with Dr. Betterson at that point. And then, but ultimately, I think I found where my major interest lied, which was in radiology, and did a good amount of research and a lot of work with Tom Natick in the neuroradiology section of the radiology department. So, really enjoyed that work that I did. And from there, sadly, I left New York to drive down 95 and ended up in Philadelphia in the city of brotherly love, where I did my internship at Albert Einstein, and then my radiology residency at Penn. I started off, continuing my interest in neuroscience and neuroradiology. Started off actually doing some work in the neuroradiology section at Penn, but ultimately found where my true love was, and that was actually in the heart, and ended up as a cardiovascular imager. I finished my residency and stayed on as a cardiovascular fellow at Penn, and then stayed on as staff, as faculty, which is where I remained until today. My career path, though, took a little bit of a different pathway than I guess the traditional one, just due to my, I guess the entrepreneurial spirit that was bubbling below the surface. During medical school, I actually started a company with a friend of mine, also a fellow classmate of Alexis and mine, Victor Chin. We started a company called medicalpocketpc.com. This is well before, the iPhone, or well before Blackberries or anything like that. This was right at the, beginning of the use of PDAs and handheld computers and stuff like that. and we started a company to help develop the greater use of these tools in healthcare. During my residency, started a company with one of my co-residents called Yadaluk, which was a medical imaging search engine that allowed you to find images and resources on the web that were focused primarily on on medical images. Down the line, after I had become faculty at Penn, maybe 2 years after I started as full-time faculty, I started another company, again with one of my colleagues at Penn called Montage Healthcare Solutions. This was probably one of the first real companies that I started. Ran that for a couple years while I was still full-time staff at Penn. The company was focused on business intelligence and data mining. And after about 2 years running the company, being full-time staff and trying to run the company at the same time, decided to go down to part-time at the hospital. So from that point on, which was I think 2012, is when I went down to about a day a week practicing radiology at Penn. And the rest of the time, basically, I was a CEO at Montage Healthcare Solutions. That company was acquired in 2016 by Nuance Healthcare, where I stayed on as one of their chief medical information officers. Worked at Nuance for about 3 years and left at the end of 2019 to start my latest company called Equium Intelligence. Started that at the beginning of 2020 and continue to run it as of today. So obviously I skipped a lot of details there. Happy to go over lots of any questions at any of the phases, from the business side of things to the academic part of my career. How I balanced both sides of things. But that's started off. This is actually a picture of Alexis and I.
Oh my gosh.
At do you remember where this is?
I don't think so. No.
That's at top of the world. That's on top of the World Trade Center.
Oh, wow.
Where all of it, a bunch of us used to go swing dancing and stuff like that. Obviously, before 9/11.
Wow, that's cool that you have that.
Yeah.
So can you rewind back to your very first company? How did you even know what you were doing? And was it just the two of you, or?
Yeah, it was it was the two of us plus one of the neurology residents, Neelay Shah, who's actually in this picture over here. All of the companies that I've started, I think, came out of a need to solve a problem that I faced, right? And my problem at that point was, I was interested in using, these devices, during rounds and during my clinical rotations, but there was no easy way to find all of that type of information, and there was no community around it. And in many cases they were just considered novelties. So I thought it would be helpful to actually create a resource that would help other medical students, other residents and faculty who were also interested at that point in using these devices in medicine to have a place to go and use it as a kind of a home base or a resource to get things started.
Then how do you go from the idea to then actually making the product?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of it, is stuff that I've learned on my own. And some of it is just partnering with the right people. Victor did a lot of the website design when we first started this site, because there was, at that point, there was very little stuff that was kind of pre-built that was out there. So he actually did a lot of the artwork and design for the software. For the following companies, Yada Look and Montage, again, one of my my co-residents at the time was had a little bit of an engineering background and helped to get the first, part of the product developed, and the rest is history, I guess, from there.
So can you talk a little bit about, so you're still practicing and you have your company, and how important was obviously it's important to you to keep one foot in the clinical world. Can you talk a little bit about making that choice of still being clinical, but also the business side?
Yeah, no, I get asked that question, quite a bit. Would I want to either return to medicine 100%, or would I want to leave, 100%? And to be perfectly honest, if I could maintain this balance, for the rest of my career, I would be thrilled. I'd be very happy, right? From the clinical perspective, I still really enjoy what I do, with interpreting images, with working with patients, and with teaching residents and fellows and things like that. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that aspect of it, and that's what I spent a huge part of my life training to do, right? And so I feel like it's a great opportunity to be able to continue to use those skills. And again, I really enjoy the educational aspect of being able to work in an academic medical environment. But on the other hand, the kind of the entrepreneurial aspect of it, I think allows the other part of my brain to work in a different way, and it's very exciting for me. And I guess it allows me to when I started at Penn as faculty, I was purely on the academic track. I had some protected research time, and I was expected, down the line to be able to write grants and to write papers and get published and all that kind of stuff, which I did at the beginning. But I found that, at least personally, I found a greater thrill from instead of spending time writing a grant, I actually prefer to write a business plan or a business proposal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of giving academic talks, which I still enjoy doing, but I would still rather give a pitch to an investor,
Mm-hmm.
or give a pitch to a potential customer. And kind of the thrill that you'd get, when you get a paper, accepted and published, and seeing your name, on the journal, that was great. But I found, at least from my perspective, I actually enjoyed, when I was able to close a deal, right? Like to go into a site and actually get validation from the fact that a hospital is willing to pay me money to purchase my software. So
Mm-hmm.
it was, there was actually, I really feel like there are actually a lot of different parallels, and I don't think there's certainly not a right way or a wrong way to pursue one's career. But I guess from my perspective, I think I enjoyed the thrill on the entrepreneurial side a little bit more.
It looks like you have a question from Zahi. Zahi, you want to ask it, or you want me to ask it?
No, go ahead. You can read it for me.
Okay, he said, how do you deal with intellectual property while being employed by your academic institution?
Yes, that is a very, very important question, and a very important issue to solve. At this point, I'm in better shape now, because I'm actually no longer really faculty at Penn. Even I practice there, but I'm essentially a per diem locums person. I get I go there a day a week, and I actually have to fill out a timesheet in terms of how many shifts I work, and I get paid that way. But I'm no longer actually on faculty, so I'm no longer kind of bound by the same types of intellectual property requirements. but when I first started Montage Healthcare, I was full-time faculty, and we were fortunate that one of our co-founders was also he was actually vice chair of the department at the same time, and he was also a former entrepreneur, and he knew basically what rules you had to follow. And so basically he made us, even though when I got hired, I think I flipped through, but I don't think I ever really looked at the handbook that much. But when we started the company, he actually made all of us read the handbook from cover to cover, so that we understood really what the regulations were about, how much time we could spend, what we had to declare, and the processes that we had to go through to make sure that the intellectual property issues were taken care of properly. And so that basically meant that when we developed the software, we actually had to declare it to the university and then offer it up to the university to say, is this something that you want to have do you want to be involved in this project? And they evaluated it, they took a look at it, and actually at that point they had declined. They're like, we don't have an interest, and they actually returned the invention. They call it a return to invention letter that we got, and they returned the invention back to us. But it still got complicated after that, because obviously once we started to succeed, there's always issues, and they want to make sure that they get their cut and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's very important to make sure that if you're engaging in any of these types of entrepreneurial activities while you're faculty, that you as soon as you know that you're going to be pursuing that pathway at all, to talk to your department. So we spoke with our department chair, and basically declared everything that we were doing, and then followed the university rules on declaration of the invention.
Susan, do you want to ask your question? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm good. That's great. It's a good outcome you had here.
We were fortunate. I mean, I still think that in this whole process, there's obviously some skill and some timing, but there's obviously a lot of luck involved as well. And I do think that we got lucky in a number of ways. I've seen situations where the discussions with the university don't go quite as smoothly, and and they can cause issues. But those are the things that you kind of have to prepare for and be ready to adapt. If things go south.
So maybe we'll give the medical students a chance to ask something. Carly, is your fellow neuroscience major. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think just one general question is, I think this is like kind of a general question always in this career path, but
yeah.
My question is about time.
Mhm.
And I think it feels like every step of training is so busy, just getting through the training. And so I'm curious, like, how you kind of went about really devoting time to these projects, and kind of what continues to drive you to do that.
Yeah, no, that's actually a very important question as well. And when I've talked to other other folks who have been interested in pursuing an entrepreneurial path, whether they're a medical student or a resident or even after they finished in their faculty, especially when you're a medical student and especially when you're a resident, I think you have to ensure that the number one priority, is your education. I mean, that's why you're there, right? And that will serve as a solid basis for everything else that you build on top of, right? I mean, unless you're prepared, and this is not the pathway that I took, but unless you're prepared to say, what, I want to quit what I'm doing and pursue a different pathway, you know, if you're actually looking to continue, you know, in medicine, then I think that medicine needs to be your primary focus, right? Particularly during the educational years, during residency and during residency and during medical school, you have to make sure that that's your top priority. And you know, you'll notice that everything that I've done really has kind of built on top of, you know, my experiences in healthcare and as a physician. You know, the ideas that I've gotten, you know, didn't come out of the blue. They came out of, you know, frustrations that I've had when I was on the ward, or when I was trying to deal with some administrative issue, you know, as a faculty member, when, you know, related to my clinical practice. All of these things, you know, were kind of intertwined together. So I think that it's you know, time management is always challenging, but I think the important thing is to make sure that you prioritize, you know, the training, you know, prioritize the reason that you're actually there, which is medical school or residency. And then these other things that you add on, you know, if you have time for it and these are your passions, then certainly, you know, make the time to do that.
Thank you.
Along the other veins, one question that comes up sometimes too is, do you feel like there's other educational things that would help you? Like, did you ever think about getting an MBA or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I did consider. I did consider a lot of different educational options. Considered an MBA at a few times. I actually considered it when I was in medical school, considering maybe I want to take a year off and you know, go to business school and then come back to residency. I actually considered it once I was on faculty at Penn. You know, they give you the option to take classes and do things at Wharton. But in the end, you know, again, I was fortunate enough to have these projects that were actually going fairly well, and a lot of the things that I learned, I learned, you know, on the job essentially, rather than taking courses for it. But again, I've got nothing against you know, business school or other forms of training. I was definitely considering it, but it just time-wise, it just never happened.
Let's see, Katie, you're a medical student, right? Also?
Yes, I am. I was wondering if Phil had a question because he turned on his video.
Oh, sorry,
I
Phil,
can
go ahead.
also-
Actually, Bill, do you want to take it
that's
off?
okay.
Bill, do you
Oh,
want to take it off, share screen? And then
Yeah,
we can
to
see
make it
everyone.
so we can see. There we go.
Hi, Dr. Boonn. Thanks so much for talking with us today. This has been
Sure
really
thing.
interesting. I had a couple questions, but I guess first, I'm just curious how you chose radiology. What drew you to that specialty? And I know you mentioned with entrepreneurship, you liked the idea of sort of like, you know, finding these problems that you came across and being able to solve them. And I was wondering if that mentality kind of, you know, is what kind of drew you to radiology as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of the problem-solving aspects of radiology fit very well, you know, with the kind of entrepreneurial interest that I had. I think the other aspect of it also was the technology at that point that was being deployed within radiology. That was when I started doing when I started doing my radiology clerkships and stuff like that in my third and fourth year. You know, most places were still film-based. They were, you know, places were just starting to transfer, you know, starting to move towards digital imaging. They were just starting to move towards voice recognition and stuff like that for dictations and things like that. And I just saw lots of really interesting problems that were present with all of those changes, and a lot of different opportunities as well. So I think, you know, ultimately it was probably the kind of the nascent aspect of or the growing aspect of technology within radiology at that point that really drew me to that specialty.
Thanks.
Sure.
Looks like I got a question. How did you find the money? How could you reach out investors, or did you get a loan? And does the NIH support such efforts?
Hmm. Okay, so there are multiple different ways that you can get money for these types of things. NIH typically will mostly support more academic type of endeavors, but there are grants, small business grants that you can apply for through different organizations, through states and stuff like that to fund the initial startup process. You know, we were fortunate. You know, the first couple companies that we started, the Medical Pocket PC and Yadalook, really was not that resource intensive. So we actually did not need to raise money for that. It mostly just took time to get those things up and running. But Montage Healthcare, you know, definitely required some capital. At that point, you know, once we got started, we hired you know, a full-time engineer, a full-time sales and marketing person to get things rolling. And you know, we were fortunate to self-fund. We basically raised money internally through friends and family and our network and stuff like that to raise our first round. And then, you know, as we grew, we were able to raise another round through that process. So, you know, I know others that go through, you know, angel investing pathways, which is also a you know, a very good way to get started. And you know, if you're fortunate enough to be able to self-fund, that's obviously a good option as well.
All right, great. Audrey or Tufane, do you guys have any questions you want to ask? Feel free to take yourself off mute. Or not, or I'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
So how do you, can you talk about a typical work day then for you? Not the radiology day, but
Yeah.
the rest of the week.
Well, you know, there's a pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic. You know, post-pandemic, it's mostly me doing exactly what I'm doing right now, like literally sitting in this seat, you know, going from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. And it's, you know, I'll alternate between folks in the company and talking to my engineers or my sales guys or my, you know, those guys to figure out, you know, how the product's doing, anything we need to improve, anything going on with new customers, old customers, you know, that kind of stuff. So a lot of internal meetings, and then the rest of the time are external Zooms that I have with potential new customers. And so basically getting on for about 30 minutes or 45 minutes or so and pitching the product and talking to folks about, you know, what problems they have and how we can solve them. Pre-pandemic, there was a lot more travel involved. I was on the road, you know, 2 to 3 weeks, you know, out of the month,
Wow.
basically visiting sites and doing what I do on Zoom, but actually in person.
Mhm.
So this certainly makes it easier from the travel perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
Were you reading films remotely as well, or?
No, so when I and even now, when I'm on clinical, I probably do 60, 70%, no, maybe more than that, 70, 80% of it, you know, on site, you know, at the hospital.
Mhm.
I'll only read remotely when I'm on, if I'm on call, or if I'm just doing some stuff that's backup, or if it gets really slow at some point, then I'll leave and then read the rest of the stuff at home.
Okay.
But again, since it's mostly, you know, since it's an academic environment, so I work with, you know, residents and fellows every day. It really helps to be there in person.
Mhm. What do you see sort of as the next thing you want to work on, or you feel like you're happy right now with what you're working on, or?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I'm this last company got started beginning of 2020, and so we're really just getting, and there was, we did fine throughout the major part of COVID, but it certainly slowed down the rollout and things like that, because obviously people were mostly focused on taking care of patients and all that kind of stuff rather than trying to buy new software. So it probably put us back a few months, but now we're up and running and things are going fairly well. Yeah, mostly focused on trying to get this product and this company off the ground.
With your, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Alexis, it's David Mendelson. I wanted to mention for the students that Bill mentioned that he works with the residents and the fellows. That's one of the things that made Montage, his Empower product, so successful. We use it every day in radiology. And by the way, any of the students who haven't seen it and would like to, if they email me, be happy to do a demo for them. But it understands the workflow that residents and fellows and attending staff in radiology and in clinical disciplines enjoy. And that's what makes for a successful product frequently, is not just the IT aspects of it, but that it really blends in well with what we do on a daily basis.
That was not a paid advertisement, right?
It's not at all.
I was going to, but I definitely appreciate that vote of confidence. Thank you, David. And when you're ready for the next demo, I'm happy to show you what we're working on now.
Yes, we'll arrange for that, Bill.
Thank you.
How have you known when to move on to the next project?
Most of the times it's,
All right, I'm gonna get going. Live.
Okay. Great talking to you, David. A lot of it comes from, I think a lot of it is it just happens naturally.
Hold on, let's see if we can mute him. David, can you mute yourself? Okay, all right.
Yeah. A lot of it is basically, out of my hands. When Montage was acquired by Nuance, and so that was kind of the when it was time to move on from one company to the next. And then when I worked with Nuance for a while, I really enjoyed that experience. I mean, they're a publicly traded company. They've been very successful in the healthcare market.
Is it the same Nuance that does the dictation? Okay.
So that is the company that bought Montage, and I learned a ton from working, inside a large company, like a large corporation. But I realized that what I really enjoy doing is working, in a much smaller kind of startup environment. So I think stayed there for several years and kind of learned what I needed to learn from that, and made sure that the product was in good hands, and then I guess felt like it was time to leave.
Yeah. Okay, great. Katie or Phil or anyone else, any last questions? Going once, going twice?
Yeah, this is Kathleen. I was wondering if you could comment on how you formed your business partnerships. Were these all friends of yours and colleagues, or did you actually actively seek them out?
Yeah, no, it is pretty amazing. Like, they were all the co-founders I had were either, colleagues. The first one I was with Victor, our Alexis, our fellow medical student.
Yes.
My second and third companies were with my co-resident and co-faculty member, and then the most recent one was with folks that I knew from my last several companies. So it was always with people that I knew from before, and even folks that I had hired also came from my Rolodex of people that I'd worked with previously. Like our first salesperson from at Montage was someone that helped to sell software to Penn. Like, and I worked with him, in setting up the new software application, product when I was actually on the Penn side of things, when I was the actual customer and he was the salesperson, and I realized that he did a very good job, and we formed a pretty good relationship there. So eventually, when it came time to hire somebody, I hired him.
When you do your interview process for your for your company, is there anything in particular that you're looking for people that you're adding?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's a lot of it is passion and flexibility, particularly since we're working in a when you're in a startup, basically your role is basically anything you're asked to do, right? You basically do anything and everything when you're in a startup, because you don't have 20 other people that can subspecialize. So when we went to the trade show to set up the conference, whether you're an engineer or a salesperson, a marketing person, or the CEO, you're on your hands and knees, like building the booth, all that kind of stuff. So it was I was looking.
How do you get that? How do you get that from the interview process, though?
That's the thing. We didn't hire too many people only from, it's rare that was the first time that I saw them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was people that I knew from before, people who I had interacted with, like, again, our first customer salesperson that customer support person that we had at Montage was someone who did customer support for one of the products that I was a customer for at Penn, right? So I saw the way she interacted with customers. I saw the amount of time and her passion and her ability to really get things done. So I think that was part of the process of kind of understanding the type of person they are, rather than just relying only on interviews, which as you know could be very challenging if the only interaction you have is a formal interview.
Yeah. Okay, great. Katie or Phil, any other questions? You guys have? No? All right. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're super busy, so it was really great to hear everything you've been up to.
I really enjoyed it, and certainly if anyone has any additional questions, Alexis, feel free to share my email. I'm
Okay.
happy to touch base with anyone if they have any questions they want to ask offline. And same to anyone who couldn't make it to this thing live. If they have any questions from the recording, please feel free to reach out.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great one.